Tēnā koutou katoa kua tau nei ki roto o tō tātou whare tipuna, o whare wānanga, whare tipuna, whare wānanga. And kia ora to all our Indigenous brothers and sisters and to our many visitors from over the seas. And kia ora to our IFIP whānau. So, 1956 was a fabulous year of New Zealand firsts. It was the year that New Zealand won the cricket, its first test match victory over the West Indies. It was also, sadly, the death of Opo, the gay dolphin, not to be confused to his straight cousin Jack. It was also the year of the Springboks tour in New Zealand. And it was also the year that people declared that New Zealand had the best race relations ever anywhere in the whole world. Aye. So 1956 was a year of New Zealand firsts. It was also the year that my father met my mother, an Englishman from South Manchester, the home of Coronation Street, met this Māori maid. That's not her, by the way. And over time gave birth to 7 children. Now, back in those days, of course, any children of mixed marriages were considered not quite right. Non-existent was the thinking that 2 halves made a whole. And then, ironic then, that by the 80s, everyone was trying to trace their Māori heritage to the 8th degree. And the thinking then became that if you had mixed heritage, suddenly you had the best of both worlds. But racial descriptive blemishes aside, I guess you can say that collaboration for me started in the womb. So what does this have to do with our talk this morning? Well, April and I are here to talk about the power of collaboration. So when I think about those times and now and here all around the world, I think about the collaborative power and the opportunity it presents to create a momentum of change. And I believe that there are a number of key factors that make this momentum happen. Firstly, people want to connect. Through leading and connecting, through people and ideas, we create community. We create community through coming together because of causes, common causes, through our family, through social media and the internet, through our work and networks, through our spiritual values, through the things that we volunteer for that do important and valuable services within our communities. Now, because of this community and connection, when something happens, the opportunity to create a momentum of change is caused by either one or two of these reasons, either because we feel threatened or because we are inspired. So to give an example, in 2010, the New Zealand government announced the granting of a deep-sea oil drilling permit to a Brazilian company called Petrobras to seismically survey the deep seas of the east coast for oil and gas. Now, this permit came on the heels of the Deepwater Horizon explosion in the Gulf of Mexico, which killed 11 people, injured 17, and devastated an entire coastline that is still not recovered to this day. So, back in New Zealand, we had this taniwha, this sea monster, come into our waters. And there was mass outrage, particularly from our tribal areas of Ngāti Porou and Te Whānau Apunu. And from all around, friends and supporters came from afar to support us to stop the seismic surveying, which was happening in our waters. But from this threatening yet inspirational time, leadership emerged, helping to build a momentum that inspired and activated so many, many people. During that time, our trust, Toi Toi Manawa, was born, and we asked ourselves, what can we do to contribute to this momentum? We could see that the strength and power of this movement came from our connection to our lands and waters and our relationships with each other. And we just wanted to find a creative way to support that action and momentum. So we decided to do festivals. We had music, We had wānanga on climate change, we had activism, traditional kai, earthship building, getting our elders to stand up and talk about what it was like in the day, visiting significant sites, and all of this with along stages where we mentored our rangatahi to perform with some of our New Zealand greats, and ran sort of composing workshops and recording workshops, and all of this to build the mana and the potential of our rangatahi, of our young people. And every time we ran an event, we had a theme that was connected to what was important in the bigger picture. So 7 festivals and untold wānanga and workshops later, our next big project is, of course, working with Pacific Peoples Partnership on a project that is international, so you're all invited. That's Indigenous, which means there'll be a lot of food. And we might even get down to some serious business of climate change and climate action. So one of the things that I believe that we are in a time of collaborative leadership, and we're using the model of, leading by example. Now, some people believe that you have to have charisma before you can become a leader, but I believe that by being a leader, you gain charisma. That's our Auntie Eddie and Uncle Danny, by the way. To be a leader of collaborative change, you also need to be prepared that you will upset people. And because you're upsetting the status quo. Now, not Jake the Muss kind of upsetting, but the kind of upsetting that that you do what you do because you know that you must. And to be a leader of collaborative change, you must also be someone that doesn't always go by the rules, that you have the discerning ability to know when the rules apply to you and when they don't. And lastly, as a leader of collaborative change, you would know that you are part of a greater world that connects us, and your place in this world is driven by your passion, your drive, your love of your people, your lands, your waters, your belonging, and your desire to build the mana and potential of others. So April and I are sharing this little 20-minute corridor that we have with you, and I'd like to thank you just for that very short but brief introduction into the kind of magic and potential of collaboration.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's so exciting to have the IFIP Pacific Regional Hui here in Otaki. I'm so excited for this. I've had the opportunity to go to a number of IFIP meetings in New York and also in Tofino. We hosted one on the Pacific Northwest coast there that I was really pleased to volunteer at and be part of. So it's pretty exciting to be here. I'd also like to acknowledge the amazing territories we're on and how inspired I am by everything that I've heard already about what has happened in this community for language and cultural revitalization. I just want to talk a little bit about Pacific Peoples Partnership. We've been in Canada. We're the only organization in Canada for 40 years that have been connected to the South Pacific. We're quite unique. We're the only organization, like I say, that is connected in that way. And what's central to our work is connecting Indigenous peoples north-south. The picture you can see here is it's a celebration of those connections north-south. We've brought Papua New Guinea artists up to Canada. They're from the Sepik River region, and we had 2 master carvers traveling up, and we also brought one of the first Bilum weavers ever to come up to Canada as well. And when they were in Canada, we didn't just want to bring them up to meet local artists and to also come to the University of British Columbia Museum of Anthropology, where they had a major exhibition there. We also wanted to open opportunities for all kinds of sharing and collaboration. So that is typical of the work we do. We'll fundraise to bring individuals up from the South Pacific, and then we'll create really meaningful, deep programs for them to connect and learn from and contribute to and share with local Indigenous peoples in Canada. So what you see there is you see Nancy Wani, one of the first women ever from the Sepik River region to come up to Canada, meeting with Joe Martin, who is one of our Canadian, oh great, yeah, we know of the Joe Martin fan. Joe Martin, who is one of our master canoe makers, and who is also credited with helping to save some of the ancient rainforests in Tofino on our island there. And with some of our students, because we believe in working with youth, the youth of our future, who helped to coordinate some of these programs. But the programs went rather deep. They were also not only to animate the exhibit or to have spaces for the public to get to know these people, but they were also to share what's happening in the Sipig River community, and that they have a mine going upstream from their community fairly shortly to open probably, and what are the implications and what are the things they can do. So working with scientists and bringing people together so that we can teach baseline training on how to monitor the health of the river so that they can hold that against the mining company, hopefully, and keep this, the environmental contamination or destruction at bay. But connecting peoples north-south is central to our work, and in particular with Indigenous peoples. Sorry, there we go. Culture, the sharing and celebration of diverse arts and cultural expression via public programming connects diverse communities via our hearts and imaginations, making allies and potential ambassadors. Our annual One Wave Festival typically addresses issues around climate change. However, in the year of Canada's 150th birthday, and the year of reconciliation in our city of Victoria, we chose to focus our One Wave Festival this year on colonization and the theme, We Are Still Here. Partnerships and working with our local Songhees Nation, and we have Marshall Islanders coming to our festival this year. So that is central to our work always, is showing those deep connections between all peoples of the Pacific, North Pacific and South Pacific. Awareness. A major barrier to our work in Canada, as you might expect, is bringing attention to the critical aspects of what's happening in the South Pacific. And it has limited airplay and also limited understanding of Pacific and Canadian Indigenous issues. Part of how we address that is working with youth, teaching youth how to create media. So you can see this program right here is called Pacific Voices Exchange. We'll bring together Indigenous youth and youth of color and diversity together to learn about how to make media, how to utilize their voice. We believe this is an important part of sharing information and knowledge, which is a really critical part of our work. We're also creating Pacific streams and innovations through live streaming and sharing of multimedia so that we can share the stories from the South and also create opportunities for dialogue utilizing innovation and media. For instance, on May 16th, we were live streaming an event called Pacific Stream, Community Narratives of Climate Change, at a Canadian conference for refugees on forced migration. So we'll be featuring speakers from Borneo and Vanuatu, all remotely through the use of technology, because that's one of the issues that we found in connecting people from the North and South Pacific was limited connection and the expense of traveling. Solidarity. Divide and conquer is a strategy used against so many Indigenous peoples. And we can conquer this through solidarity and action. The West Papua human rights issues has been a focus of our work for over 30 years. Jeremy, you see a young, oops, I'm at the wrong one, sorry. There we go. Jeremy, the young man with the hand up in the air, he rode his bicycle over 22,000 kilometers in 2 campaigns to raise awareness for West Papua over 7 countries, over 3 years. This in part was actually sponsored by Lush, I think, which we might have someone here. And that was to raise awareness and build solidarity for West Papua. So those kind of awareness building campaigns is also part of the work that we all need to do, and is critical. Just wanted to also mention that one of the leaders of this movement, Benny Wenda, is also currently in New Zealand right now, and he'll be speaking at the New Zealand Parliament on May 10th. So partnerships are at the very heart of what we do. We're a very small organization, and we can only do what we do when we work in partnerships with other organizations and with individuals and communities, and also the host nations of which we live upon, which are Songhees, Esquimalt, and the Coast Salish peoples. So partnerships are across sectors, disciplines, rank, privilege, and culture. They are equitable, mutually beneficial, rooted in respect and reciprocity. We work closely with elders. Elder Joan Morris, who you see there, is accepting greetings from Paj from Australia. And what we are doing at that time is the opening ceremonies of our Pacific Networking Conference, which is where we had the opportunity to get to know Aura. Our Pacific Networking Conferences are thematic, and they're held every 2 to 3 years, and they basically are topical for the time and the critical needs of that time in life. The next one that we're doing, I'm very pleased to be saying, is happening in 2018. I like to think in the spring, but apparently it's autumn here. So next May, you can expect to see an amazing conference with my partner here, Aura, held in her territories. And so we're announcing it here today, and we have some information that's at the back table there that you'll be able to pick up. But I'd like to bring Aura up, and we can maybe just briefly tell you a little bit about the conference that we're creating together.
See, you can't keep a good Upper Nui down. So we've been talking about this for quite a while, and obviously it's not a new idea, because a lot of Indigenous people and all people around the world are very concerned about what's happening in our climate. And so probably over the last year and a half, we've been think tanking, discussing, mulling it over, how is it going to look? And it really just started with, well, why don't you just come to Whānau Apanui? You know, we've got plenty of kaimoana, plenty of seafood, you're going to have some good laughs, lots of bush, we'll take you in, we'll get you lost for a couple of days, it's a spiritual journey, and then we'll just have a big hui and talk about climate action. So it was really just one of those things, and April, being adventurous as she is, just said, yep, okay, we're coming. And so that's how really it began once we had first met. And after a lot of discussion, it was really talking about, well, our Indigenous prophecies, our Indigenous environmental science has been fundamental to our interconnectedness with the planet and with how we live, and our interdependency and how we live together. And a lot of that knowledge, though it still operates for some of us, the mass kind of manner that it used to do is not as obvious anymore. And so this summit is also about reinvigorating all of that traditional knowledge. So we're going to have traditional kai with site visits into the ngahere, intertwined with Western science, climate change, sort of the information that Western scientists give, and then also intertwined with activism, because we are not passive receivers of climate action or climate change. We will not just sit here and wait for it to happen. And so creating understandings and forms of actions that are already happening all around the world, but how do we activate ourselves and our communities on a very grassroots and local level? So for those of you that don't know Te Whānau Apanui, and shame on you because that's the centre of Aotearoa, it's a very rural area, very traditional. It's one of the few iwi that hold a lot of the ownership of our land, so we hold about up to 97% of our whenua. When you come in, it's like you've morphed into another being, and there's, from whakatohia to our tōrere cousins to Te Whānau Apanui, we're all very related, and tūhoi. So you will be part of a bigger part of a family once you enter into our tribal area. But we're very happy to be in partnership with Pacific People's Partnership, because they're a phenomenal organisation, and we look forward to putting some gumboots on them and getting dirty.
Thank you very much. We hope to see you there.
Whānau, there's just these pamphlets. If you want to know a little bit more, there's just in the back there. Otherwise, come and grab a cup of tea and come and sit down with us. Kia ora.